And at number 10, in-universe games. The knowledge that Scott Cawthon's in-universe counterpart has made games about the Fazbear restaurants in the FNAF universe has been driving us, or more particularly me, crazy ever since we learned about it in Help Wanted. Literally Help Wanted's opening scene. What games are the ones he made? Were they the original FNAF games? Does anything we've done up until this point in the games actually matter? Well, it seems like Security Breach might have actually at least kind of explained it with a single machine known as Mangle's Quest, which, if you don't remember, is one of the mini games that you had to play in order to unlock the good ending of FNAF 3 and the Happiest Day minigame. I guess technically though that has even more implications. If to release the souls of children we had to actually like glitch out an actual game, but that's a discussion for another day. I'm not talking about that now. And at 9, toy animatronics. Has Security Breach actually wrapped up the story of the toy animatronics? It's possible. I mean, this idea has been out there for a while, really ever since Glamrock Chica was revealed. But could the toy animatronics actually have been reused or repurposed into the Glamrock animatronics, or at least parts of them being used? And actually it would make sense, considering how these animatronics seem to also have like a security database. Oh my god, wait, no, they actually do have a security database. Freddy straight up pulls Gregory out of his stomach and then like looks at him and says, I cannot locate you. There's no profile for you. So yeah, they have a security database. They don't like seem to have one, they actually have one. Just like the toys from FNAF 2. They would scan a criminal database to see if anyone was willing to commit murders. But with facial recognition and conveniently the same glitches that allowed them to misidentify William, allowing them to not identify Vanny, since Freddy is unable to see Vanny without Roxy's eyes. Which begs the question, could the other animatronics see her? Or like, is it just Roxy? And if the last versions of the toy animatronics were so terrible at their job, because I mean, like, at this point they know they were, and I guess like maybe they were like, oh yeah, no, it's because William programmed them, so that's why they were terrible. But like, still, why would you reuse that? Why would you risk it again? That seems like a absolutely abysmal idea. And at 8, alligator mask. Now, my original idea was that the man in room 1280 took place after FNAF 6's fire, and that's how William became Glitch Trap. However, it's seeming more and more that the man in room 1280 actually takes place after Security Breach. After all, I mean, like, it would explain why the one you should not have killed is wearing an alligator mask, since it would be Monty if this does take place after, since there wasn't really an alligator animatronic beforehand, and there's no way that an alligator mask is Happy Frog, okay? Just saying. And considering how Freddy runs off with Gregory at the end of the game, Monty would be left to run the show. I mean, we actually like see this happen in a newspaper article at the end of the good ending. The one where you go through the loading dock that required level 7 clearance, and you just like, Gregory somehow drives a van with Freddy and then uses the battery to jumpstart Freddy. Yeah, that ending, we see that since Freddy's gone, Monty ends up running the show. And Vanessa even uses this as a threat to try to convince Freddy to give us up when he's in parts in service. You know, when his like head is disconnected and we have to reconnect it. So a kid wearing a Monty mask after the canon ending of Security Breach would explain a lot. It would make a lot of sense. It would also explain the reason why Afton's body isn't burnt horrifically like it's supposed to be in the Man in Room 1280 in FNAF 9, because like that he hasn't done that yet. I mean, it also explains why he's called Burn Trap. At least we know he didn't escape the FNAF 6 pizzeria like everyone thought he had though, right? And at 7, Ultimate Custom Night. Ultimate Custom Night was actually a pretty dividing point among FNAF fans and theorists alike. Some thought that it was Afton in hell, others thought that it was a coma, but we now have a definitive answer. Assuming it does take place between Security Breach and FNAF 6, as the release of the games would indicate, it would actually mean that Ultimate Custom Night is what Burn Trap is seeing while unconscious in the recharge station. Perhaps it's him keeping himself from dying in the recharge station, like a mind kind of fight thing, like whenever a main character dies in a show and they have to fight back to get to their body. Yeah, that kind of thing. And we don't actually see him wake up until he beats 50-20 mode, and then he comes after us like we see in the true ending to the game. So basically, we get down there, and as soon as we activate it, he beats 50-20 mode. This actually makes sense given that Scrap Trap is in Ultimate Custom Night, since this would sort of be like a nightmare sequence with Scrap Trap serving as what William is dealing with in these moments, or I guess his misdeeds, or his wickedness made of flesh, as Nightmare puts it. But you know, the whole aftermath of the FNAF 6 fire, and then returning to that Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, either because of like Charlotte being there and he wanted to kill her, or maybe just some other thing that Henry had to do to actually lure Afton back. We don't actually know what that was, but either way, he had to deal with it, and it makes sense as to why now. And it's 6 brothers. Now this is something that MatPat actually talked about in his recent FNAF Theory video that went out on January 1st, 2022. However, this is something I have been calling for ages. Ever since we learned Gregory's name, ever since that Funko statue was leaked, I have been saying that their relationship is very brotherly. It was awfully similar to Michael and the Crying Child. Especially when the older brother is represented by, or maybe even now possessing, the Glamrock Freddy animatronic, when it was a version of a Freddy animatronic that killed his little brother in the first place. And before you get all mad at me saying, oh no, that was Fredbear. Fredbear is a version of Freddy, okay? Go away. Fredbear is literally a version of Freddy. Back off. The fact that this is so solid after the game comes out, it kind of explains that what happened actually did happen. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that now we're trying to make up for it, to reconcile. And if Gregory ends up actually being a robot crying child, you all owe me a coffee. Because I've been calling that one for ages too. I have been saying that for so long, and so many people got mad at me. But look at this, MatPat says it, and I saw no hate comments on the top, at the top comments, okay, on that video. I saw no hate. Halfway through into number 5, the FNAF 6 Fire. FNAF 6 acted as the narrative ending for many animatronics. The fun times in Molten Freddy, the puppet inside of Lefty, Scrap Baby, and even us as Michael Afton. But the secret true ending to this game actually shows us the aftermath of this fire. We see the aftermath of FNAF 3's Fire and Sister Location's final cutscene, with Springtrap popping out of the ruins of Fazbear Fright, and this time around we learn about the third last game's fire in this ending. Since, as MatPat pointed out in his recent theory, as well as many people have pointed out in the comments of various videos and Reddit posts, the pizzeria you're in for this secret ending looks a hell of a lot like the one that we make, or like the base for the one we make in Pizzeria Simulator. And since it burns down, basically it doesn't matter which one you made, this is what it would burn down to. Which honestly explains why William was in the recharge station. Okay, they didn't actually have to move his body. Which actually, it makes sense. Finally, something in this godforsaken series makes sense. Something makes sense in a FNAF game, praise the Lord. But this also means that he hasn't been taken to the hospital yet for the man in room 1280 to occur. This idea that this is the FNAF 6 pizzeria also ends up solidifying when you see that the blob is like the new Ennard, with all of the different animatronics from FNAF 6 present when you actually like take a look closer and even like clip inside of it. There's a video for it. Many people have done this on YouTube, but you can like see the Scrap Baby mask, you can see the Puppet's mask. Yeah, combine this with, you know, the fact that Springtrap is here, or I guess Burn Trap or Scrap Trap, whatever, okay? The fact that William in some form of animatronic Golden Bunny is here, and you get an explanation for what happened after the FNAF 6 fire. In at 4, Princess Quest. The inclusion of Princess Quest in the Help Wanted mobile port is a pretty little minigame added since they couldn't really include the full glitch trap and 16 tapes thing in a phone game. So they added Princess Quest's 16 braziers, and then they all came together to form a form of glitch trap at the end. This seemed like a simple way to include everything when it first came out, but now we have a whole new lease on this idea. Since, with Security Breach, the way to get the best ending, even though it's not canon, is through these Princess Quest arcade machines. But they've been ported from a mobile game into arcade cabinets. We learn this in one of the various lore duffel bags that we can find throughout the game. One in Bonnie Bowl says that they ported Princess Quest 1 from an old mobile game. Why port to arcade? It's a very good question, but these Princess Quest games are really what's holding Vanessa back from reclaiming her body, which we see happen in the best ending, hence why it's the best ending. Getting close to the end in number 3, spirits. One of the major issues with FNAF for some is the inconsistency of the whole spirits are real, but they aren't the ones doing the actual possession thing. Since in FNAF 3's minigames, we see the physical spirits of the original 5 missing children, and then in Fazbear Fright, we learn that agony and emotions are what actually cause possession in this world. So how could there be those actual physical spirits if it was just their emotions causing the suits to move? And while originally we might have just chalked it up to maybe there being other emotions or even just like William hallucinating, with Security Breach and specifically the rooftop ending, I think we have a better idea. Since in the rooftop ending we end up seeing Vanny dead on the ground and then we unmask her and it reveals Vanessa. And then a couple seconds later we see Vanessa looking down at her body on top of the building, just watching herself. Yeah, that's definitely not a problem at all. Thanks, Scott. This could mean, though, that there are only spirits when the person regrets what they've done. Since the kids in the original suits terrorized so many others, maybe they ended up actually feeling bad about it, even though they couldn't really control it because it was their emotions controlling the suits. But maybe they still felt bad about what was going on, and then that's why they had spirits. Regret. It's a powerful thing. And ultimately, in at number 2, the Blob. Okay, so what I'm talking about here, as opposed to the FNAF 6 ending, which I mentioned before, is not what the Blob is meant to do, but something else entirely. Here, I'm explaining that the Blob in this game actually explains the blob of tentacle goo that comprises Baby, introduced in the final few Fazbear Frights books. This blob actually explains why that whole thing was introduced and explored and why it happened. Because it's setting up yet another f***ing antagonist for the future of the FNAF games. As long as the next owner of the IP wants to go in that direction, that is. Because now, they got 3. They can go with William, they can go with Vanny, or they can go with the Blob, or hell, they can go backwards and make an entirely new character for all we know. And even if they don't want to go that way, they can wrap up William's story first and then move on to someone else. Like, I mean, Scott and Steel Wool did leave a death animation for William unused in the files, and I doubt that it's going to be used for a potential DLC. Because first we need a few updates for the game. But there's no way that they wouldn't capitalize on an obscure ending like that for another game. Because like, there's no way that they would officially kill William off. I want it to happen, but it's not gonna happen. I wouldn't be surprised if Scott's like been working with the person taking over for the endings of this game to see which one fits where they want to go next the best. Hence why there are so many endings. Scott was like, okay, pick one. Actually, no, I doubt that. I feel like Scott was like, this is the true ending. You gotta work with this. But here are other ones to help guide you. And finally, into number 1, the Help Wanted ending. Now, while the whole glitch trap shouldn't be possible thing is a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to explore, I think that Security Breach, and more so the Princess Quest ending, perfectly explains the Help Wanted ending. You need to beat the first game, then you beat the second game, and then you choose the Vanny ending, and instead of pushing the button to disassemble Vanny, you play the third Princess Quest game. This will result in the player actually saving Vanessa, as long as you beat the third one, and then finding Vanny's mask on the floor. But how did that really save Vanessa, you ask? Well, actually, it's fairly simple. Help Wanted. If you've seen any of my videos where I discuss the endings of Help Wanted and how when we complete that puzzle in the final battle we get locked behind a door, you'll know that I said that that's us being distracted so that William has an opportunity to actually shut us away in our own mind. So if we do the thing that we do to actually beat him when he's attacking us, we're just distracted enough so that he wins even more. And that he does. But this Princess Quest ending actually really proves me right. Since the end of Princess Quest 3, you open a giant door with a large keyhole surrounded by glitching cracks and purple stuff. And in Help Wanted, we get sealed behind a giant door with a large keyhole with cracks around it and even handprints on the inside. This with the obvious connection via Princess Quest to Help Wanted, because, you know, Princess Quest was the mobile version of the 16 tapes. This is us releasing the player from Help Wanted, who consequentially ends up being Vanessa from the wall that Afton set up, since after this door closes we see her mask on the floor, and even sit on a hill with Vanessa and Freddy's head, which is a whole other can of worms, which makes MatPat think that Gregory is crying child, Freddy is Mike, and that Vanessa is Elizabeth Afton, which we've been calling for months. I feel like we've been calling that for a year, but...
The issue I've been having is whether William is dead or alive. And there are a couple different things to consider here. Firstly, he is seemingly in a new endoskeleton, which would indicate that he's dead and Glitchtrap's consciousness is just being transferred into Burntrap's spot via the recharge station. But his head is clearly visible. Like, you can see his skull and his actual human jaw, meaning that he could still be holding on to this world via that head, especially given who we're talking about here. The most stubborn to ever grace our screens. This also can't be a new endo, and just the model that they're using for the others since it was easier and they could release the game faster. This seems to be indicated by the way that Burntrap walks. If this was a new endoskeleton, why would he be shambling like a zombie? But the claws and repaired sections to the actual endo also seem to indicate that this is also a new endo, and possibly even Glamrock Bonnie's. So there's a whole lot of wrong going on here. All the points are intersecting and it's not fun. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me, but I think I might have found a way to make it work. However, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. If this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, it would need to have broader shoulders and actually be shorter. Like, even scaling the Glamrock endo so that they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same and lined up, they don't match. There are similarities, of course, between the two designs, but there aren't enough similarities where I can call this even really above 50%. There's also the issue of the muscles being woven throughout the body, or maybe those are nerve fibers. If it was just the head, I'd understand, since they could have just pulled the old endo head and put it onto the new body. Since all the parts were intertwined, Afton's head would have come with it. But with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's way too intricate to actually have been placed there. And they would only be there and not dangling if it had been stuck there after being shoved full of machine parts. I don't think that they're taking super glue to glue these fibers back onto a new endoskeleton. If Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of his body bits. It wouldn't. That's not how it works. Which would mean this would have to be Springtrap's endoskeleton, which also explains why it's so run down, why he shambles, and why he hardly has any casing. And Springtrap's design also seems to change from game to game. From FNAF 3 to FNAF 6, he was totally different, so him changing again in Security Breach seems like no big deal in comparison. It's basically normal for him to get a newer and seemingly scarier attempt at his design with a new game, and at least this has an understandable progression from the last game and even from FNAF 3, since it's more run down and not just a bigger head like Scraptrap. It's like he sold his soul for a bigger head and then the demon kind of made a joke out of it. The most reasonable assumption that I have for what happened though was that he was given the hands of Glamrock Bonnie since it has the claws, and just he wasn't given the entire endoskeleton. But then again, his arms have the bits of muscle and nerve fibers as well, which means that it would have to have been his old one, it would have to have been there from the start, it would have to be the arm of the old endoskeleton, which is a whole other conundrum because Scraptrap was missing an arm and Springtrap didn't have any casing on his foot, yet here we are. I just think that we have to kind of leave this one up to artistic license and accept that it's meant to be the same endoskeleton, just with a replacement part or two from Glamrock Bonnie instead of like the entire endoskeleton. It makes sense, honestly, and it's really the only reasonable explanation that we have. Unless the colors are wrong on the images that I was looking at and the bits on the hands are just meant to be melted casing, which is possible, but I doubt it. As for if he's wanted dead or alive, I think this version of Afton is actually finally dead. And honestly, I'm happy about that because it means that even if he's still here, we can kill him off for good. This is the most logical conclusion to me because, well, other than him basically being only a head, this guy has had multiple backslides of, oh, I'm dead, just kidding. And this time around, while we instantly predicted that he had indeed survived, I think that Scott is finally flipping the narrative on us. We predicted it, so it's not gonna happen. Afton is no longer connected to his body, as we can clearly see from the formation of Glitch Trap. And Glitch Trap being created would only be possible if Afton died, since the one you should not have killed was dead set on keeping him breathing. But Burn Trap, this guy doesn't even have lungs anymore. So yeah, this version of Afton's body is dead, but his consciousness lives on. Like how there's like the conspiracy that Walt Disney froze his head. Yeah, well, that's kind of what they did with Glitch Trap. And then that programming was probably uploaded into his old host, or I guess vessel, since I've been rewatching Supernatural. Basically, this guy would be impossible if he wasn't just Afton's code loaded onto an endoskeleton. Plus, the eyes are clearly robotic this time around with purple pupils, rather than the previous iterations that had seemingly real eyes, Afton's actual eyes, since it was in suit mode after he got snapped. And opening his head in those like secret FNAF 3 screens revealed that it was actually like his eyes because they were seemingly in the same place. So, all in all, here's the story of Burn Trap as far as I can tell. During the FNAF 6 fire, Afton passes out. Not dead, but still somehow alive thanks to the one you should not have killed, Crying Child. This leads to the events of Ultimate Custom Night that sees Afton stuck in his own mind trying to escape so that his spirit can move on. But Crying Child, represented by a golden bear like the one who crushed his skull, tries to keep him stuck, until eventually he throws everything that he has at him. 50-20 mode. After being so weakened by the fire, William survives this attack on his mind, and Crying Child's spirit is set free, hence the spasming bear at the end of that mode. That's him burning as the fire sets his soul free. William's soul then latches onto the nearest thing that it can find, one of the hard drives in the storage room that the Scrap Trap animatronic was being kept in. One that gets scanned to create the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience as the company tries to rebuild its reputation. Then, not wanting to waste the land that was bought for their company, Fazbear Entertainment begins building a new pizzaplex on top of their old location. Whether this is due to Glitch Trap possessing someone higher up at the company through the game or someone just wanting to save money is up in the air, but the remains of the FNAF 6 simulated pizzeria are buried under the pizzaplex's foundation. That's when Vanessa comes along, our player character from Help Wanted, who reassembles the 16 cassette tapes in an effort to destroy Afton once and for all, but ultimately fails. When our mind is distracted by following Tape Girl's instructions, William locks us in our mind and in the Princess Quest minigame that would later get ported to an arcade cabinet for insurance purposes. And by insurance, I mean like insurance on Vanessa so that she wouldn't easily be able to escape. As Vanny, William then uses the animatronics to dig out his body and put his old endoskeleton in a recharge station so that when he's able to transfer himself back into it, he'll be able to move. After all, at this point, he's not a spirit, but simply coding, which means that in another game, if he is still alive, we'll actually be able to kill him off. He also gives his old suit some upgrades in the form of Glamrock Bonnie's hands and right foot. Why would he not go with a new, more powerful endo, you ask? Because it's William and his Spring Bonnie suit. It's his body in there. Of course he'd want it back. He's been that way for like at least 40 years at this point. It's all he knows. Then, as Gregory and Freddy jump down into the pit, William can sense it. Either because he's an animatronic, because one or both of them are meant to be his kids, or something else, he activates his body even though it's not fully charged and tries to take over Freddy. He's not fully charged, hence the shambling, which Gregory ends up preventing with fire, which has surely traumatized Afton by now, and considering how he's only code, this time fire would actually finish the job. Eventually, the place actually catches on fire, and Freddy and Gregory escape, but the blob grabs hold of William. Whether it was to save him or seal his fate is unknown, but this almost certainly isn't the end of William Afton's story. Well, the concept of multiple Earths is fairly simple, kind of honestly put. For every moment there is a world where where every outcome exists, although they don't all exist at the same time. Using the common cereal metaphor instead of Schrodinger's cat, in the morning you wake up to sit down for breakfast. You have multiple cereal options in front of you: Apple Jacks, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and Lucky Charms. There is an equal possibility for you to pick either one of them, and those possibilities exist on their own. But only by picking your cereal do you know what universe you end up in. Okay, I guess it's simple if you're obsessed with this kind of stuff like I am. However, what this doesn't explain is that there's a world where you don't eat breakfast. There's also one where you have Eggos instead. Or hell, there's one where you finally eat those damn freezer burnt pancakes that are staring at you for months sitting at the back of your freezer. All of those possibilities exist, and simply put, when you make a decision, you pick which branch of reality you go down, but the others still happen. So applying this to FNAF, we know that there are multiple endings but only a single canon ending, because this is the ending that continues this branch of reality. The branch where we free the spirits of the missing children in FNAF 3 instead of letting them suffer eternally. The one where we go to the scooping room in Sister Location instead of going home and letting Ennard escape on its own. These are the branches that Scott deems as the one our character follows, but all other possibilities still happen. So there is a world that follows the spirits not being released, and the universe where we do save Vanny from Glitchtrap's grasp. It just so happens that these aren't the stories that we follow any further. Okay, but why does this matter? Because if FNAF ever ends up running out of ideas for how to continue this story, they've perfectly set up a way to revitalize the entire series without having to worry about rewriting the established lore. FNAF Security Breach has 7 endings. That is 6 other game possibilities that we have yet to see, that might not be made, but also might be made. Like, what happens after the worst ending, when Gregory isn't around to try and fix everything? What happens after the rooftop ending, the van ending, or my personal favorite, the phaser blast ending, since it's the first ending I got, meaning that, to me at least, it's my ending, it's my canon ending. The way my Gregory worked was that he went after Vanny. These can all be explored without impacting the main continuity. Hell, they can even test things that they don't want to put in the main canon of the game. Okay, I shouldn't say that. It would be canon, but it wouldn't be in the main continuity. Since canon and continuity are different. But that's only potential, I can hear you saying. Which, firstly, are you complaining about me telling you how we can possibly get more FNAF games? That's a bit confusing. But also, well, yeah, they're potential games. It's not like they've announced any other games outside of the main FNAF continuity. Right? Wrong. Remember that old gem, the Fazbear Fanverse initiative? Oh yeah, baby, that's right. I thought the joy of creation made this into our world. No, this is just one of the branches, one of the variants for those of you who watch the Loki series on Disney+. While yes, they take place in their own universe and are not a part of the main FNAF continuity, that doesn't mean that they aren't a part of another branch. The question is, which one? Well, technically, each of the FNAF games has 2 endings at least. The one where you survive the 5 nights and the one where you die. But to know what ending we are following with these fanverse games, we must figure out what the hell is going on. Firstly, the first FNAF game is getting a remake called Five Nights at Freddy's Plus. Along with that, some older games of the various series will be remade due to them using assets that were either copyrighted or made by uninvolved people. This has to be done for the other part of the project, releasing these series for sale on console and mobile devices in series bundles. Series involved will also end up producing official merchandise like U2's collectibles and plush toys, hopefully Funko Pops. While it is clear that the Fazbear Fanverse games are confirmed to be officially part of the FNAF franchise as a whole, they will remain in their own continuity. Okay, so they have a whole separate timeline, which is why they are getting the FNAF Plus. Although Pop Goes and Five Nights at Candy's are confirmed to take place in the same universe. So Pop Goes and Five Nights at Candy's are in the same universe as each other. So focusing on FNAF and Pop Goes lore, the description for the first FNAF game states that Freddy Fazbear's new pizzeria has closed for good, and so another restaurant is going to take its place in the world of entertainment, meaning that we're either dealing with the same closure that made Circus Babies, which exists outside of the games at the moment, or we're dealing with the 1993 closure after the first game. Considering how the first game is also getting a remake and FNAF was released after the first game before Circus Babies was even a thing, we can guess that it's about the 1993 closure. Pop Goes, however, gives us a little bit more. A year after after the fire at Fazbear's Fright, a rich and creative inventor in England, only known as Fritz, has taken the role of continuing the animatronic pizzeria brand with his own restaurant called the Pop Goes Pizzeria. Sporting extremely advanced robotic characters such as Pop Goes the Weasel and Blake the Badger, the place soon became notable for being technologically ahead of its time. So this game takes place 1 year after FNAF 3, which should be taking place in 2023 since it opens 30 years after the FNAF 1 pizzeria closed. And the story summary on Pop Goes' wiki confirms this. Quote, Pop Goes takes place in November 2024. The first night happens on the 25th of November. A few days before the game started, Fritz Glade, who is the creator and owner of the Pop Goes Pizzeria, accidentally murdered his daughter, Bonnie Glade, in a PTSD attack. Now her soul is haunting the Pop Goes Pizzeria, waiting for a body she can possess, the Black Rabbit, end quote. But considering how the fire happens after night 6 in FNAF 3, which you can access after either the good or the bad ending, we can't be sure which branch we are actually in here. Since we managed to make it to FNAF 3, since Pop Goes and FNAC take place in the same universe, at least those two take place in the same universe, others might be confirmed to also take place in that same universe. I feel like all the fanverse games in this series should be in the same timeline, but hey, I mean, I don't really know how they can work with Joy of Creation. But we have to assume that we beat FNAFs 1 and 2, and considering how Springtrap never makes an appearance in Five Nights at Candy's or Pop Goes, I'm guessing that in that instance, this time Springtrap was actually burned. Thus the story of the main FNAF continuity would be over, which would make sense since it allows for the actual stories of these games to shine without us worrying about the rest of the FNAF story and how it affects these games, how they end up getting to Security Breach and all that, which I think is probably the best course of action to take. However, I'm definitely looking forward to FNAC Pop figures because I want a Monster Rat Funko in my life. I feel like I need it. Or like the ignited animatronics from the Joy of Creation. That would be dope. I want that. I want all 4 of those. I want ignited Springtrap, because that one was sick from the Halloween edition. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag, security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM. Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM. Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing, since in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, so like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant, who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burn Trap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burn Trap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. both things that he was missing or were more damaged at the time while in his scrap trap form, seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun. Maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're gonna give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there, like, with super glue. Because, like, they were deep in there, because, you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie would end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one, so at this point we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to the story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no Bunny in this Pizzaplex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next, since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we used to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers. Because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods, but also the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod. The most popular FNAF DLC concept at the moment seems to be the Choose Your Guardian DLC. The idea behind this, brought to us by Reddit user space_bear, was that you'd play through the story of Security Breach again, but this time choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. I'm assuming you could also choose Glamrock Freddy again, just because. While most of the game would remain the same if you were with Monty, with the mechanics of like hiding inside the chest cavity anyway, I'm sure that there would be some issues if it came to Roxy or Chica, which would result in them having to carry you onto their back. In the comments, it was also suggested that this could be used as a way to make the animatronics faster, but you wouldn't be safe from the other animatronics since they could still see you, because you know, you're on their shoulders. But how could these characters work if this was actually put into the game? That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. Now, as I just mentioned, Roxy's body isn't really all that big. And while Gregory is able to fit his entire body in a hole that is just over 14 inches tall in Glamrock Freddy, I still don't know how that works, I don't think that he'd be able to fit himself inside of Roxy's tiny torso. But considering how she's the fastest animatronic, sprinting at you when she sees you or even hears you after her destruction, it's safe to say that maybe the mechanic would instead be riding on her shoulders, which would make for better movement speed since she wouldn't have to worry about crushing you while you're inside, but also adding more vulnerability since the other animatronics would be able to see you on her and would follow. This would also make for way too much fan art of Gregory riding Roxy, more than there already is. Honestly, you search up Glamrock and you see Get Your Glam Rocks Off, and I wish I was kidding. But the question is, how would Roxy be the one who glitches instead of Freddy? Since the story seems to be, at least currently, that Freddy glitches because the spirit of Michael senses a little brother in Gregory, or maybe even senses that Gregory is his little bro. But assuming that that's just a theory, how would they work this into the actual, like, canon? Like, Gregory can't really hide inside Roxy's stomach after all, so how would he be able to get into her green room? My best guess would be something having to do with her insecurities. Maybe Gregory overheard her and then followed her into the green room to help her. Or maybe since he still needs to be scared of Vanessa, he turns Roxy against Vanessa by saying that the security guard is calling her ugly and saying that Sheik is the prettier animatronic. At least Roxy would be down for destroying the other animatronics in that case, as long as she gets to stay pretty. Monty's gameplay would seemingly be the most like Freddy's, with his wider torso allowing for Gregory to hide inside. But really, I can't see this character being sympathetic towards a kid at all. Like, he's got a very rockstar attitude, and I'd only see him helping Gregory if Gregory was doing stuff for Monty, you know? Like, if Monty was decommissioned or something by Vanessa for destroying his green room, and then Gregory got him working again. That's really the only way I would see these two working together, although this would come with the benefit of Monty's claws already working. Unless for story and gameplay reasons they gave that upgrade to Freddy and said that he needed it to hold on to the microphone better or something, or maybe like turn it on, something like that. Either way, I don't think Monty would mind that, especially since he would get to destroy Freddy. Something that we see from both the van ending and in the last level of Monty Golf, he's more than fine with doing. He might not want to hurt Chica or Roxy because of course every great rock star needs their backup singers, but he would certainly help you with Freddy. Which brings up the problem of where Freddy's boss battle would be. Obviously Obviously, he'd be the other option between Chica and Roxy, since Roxy's eyes are too overpowered to keep for the long haul. However, Freddy seemingly doesn't have his own area. Chica has the kitchen, which is where her battle takes place because she loves pizza, but she also has Mazer Size. Monty has a mini golf course, and Roxy has a racetrack. So where would Freddy have his boss battle? My best guess would actually be Phaser Blast. Sure, we have to avoid Chica while we play, but assuming we're playing with someone else as our guardian, it would make the most sense for Freddy to be here. Plus, the disassemble ending could be very useful here, since we could use the staff bots Vanny uses in that ending as like our way of destroying Freddy. Maybe he'd end up knocking the remote down or something, and then we could take it and say disassemble Freddy or something like that. That might cause some issues with the whole Chica thing, because then you have to go to the Bonnie Bowl to get the whole Monty mix to crush Chica. But I mean, we could move Monty's mix into Monty Golf, because I feel like that would also make sense. Chica would have to operate in much the same way as Roxy would in this fictional scenario, with us most likely being carried around on her shoulders. And while she may not be as much of a sprinter as Roxy, she can certainly move quickly. If we're giving difficulties to the animatronics, I think that Chica would definitely be like the hard mode out of all of these, since she doesn't really have any unique abilities. Maybe the voice box would be included, but that's something needed to unlock the main boss room, so it would kind of break the story and make it way easier. So maybe instead they could work it out so Freddy would have like a good voice box that we could steal, so that maybe Chica would instead soothe the animatronics, or maybe after we damage him, his voice box goes from good to broken, and then it just screeches like the original. But other than that, I don't really know how this would work. Like, I don't know how this would be different. Like, maybe instead of the whole screeching Chica's ability, she'd be able to move us around in a hiding spot, like if it had wheels, since there are more wheels than doors. I mean, since Chica loves food, seeing her move around garbage or recycling bins may not be an unusual thing. Like, maybe she's just bringing it back to snack on in her green room. So if we were hiding in one of the various bins, maybe while inside we could call her over by pushing Q, and she would end up like grabbing on to the hiding spot and kind of like pushing us around, as long as there was enough space for it. So obviously like smaller ones would be more maneuverable, but also more suspicious. I don't know. Obviously other animatronics could still inspect the hiding spot while she's holding it, and if Vanessa saw her, she would absolutely inspect it. But other than that, I think that the whole mechanic where she pushes you around would be an interesting addition, and it would make Chica a unique guardian and set her apart from Roxy, since at that point they were kind of the same thing. Although it would certainly make things interesting if we're all like, oh yeah, mommy Chica's pushing around Gregory in a stroller. Oh no. Obviously, if this were the actual DLC, Freddy would just end up replacing whatever animatronic was guarding you within the story. So if you chose Roxy, he would have the eyes, etc. Like, they'd have to find a reason for it, but I mean, like, in my humble opinion, it seems wrong if Freddy isn't the one protecting you. But this absolutely would be a fun DLC concept. But hey, if they don't do it, we can always mod it into the game, right? Just like swap a couple models around and then you're good to go. There are also some seriously dope voice actors out there who love the series, and I'm sure they would want to help out. Or maybe some voice actors are looking to add stuff into their portfolio so they can get more work, who would be willing to help. I mean, like, maybe the Freddy voice could be fairly easy. TikTok has been doing it as a trend, and if TikTok can do it, I'm sure we can do it for a mod. So like, maybe it's not such a long shot for a mod after all, like I originally thought. But why am I suggesting a mod though? Because unfortunately, I don't think that this DLC concept is going to get made, okay? I hate to say it, but while it is an incredible and extremely fun idea, the DLC that they do add to this game would most likely be canon to the main series of games. In fact, we haven't had a main series game that wasn't canon. And despite the last DLC claiming it was nothing more than a festive holiday themed add-on with no hidden intent or purpose, we know better than that. And making it so that any of these characters could protect you would probably ruin the story in some aspects and make the next game harder to set up. And while FNAF 4's Halloween DLC at the time that it came out was claimed to be non-canon with the exception of Nightmare Balloon Boy, Nightmarion and Nightmare Mangle did end up making it into Ultimate Custom Night, which would mean that Crying Child would have seen them. So eventually, even if they weren't at the time, they did end up becoming canon eventually. Meaning that since this would mess up at least like the story that we understand from the games, with the exception of like the canon ending, but like then again, it's still kind of weird. If we're right, or even on the right track about what the story is, I don't think that this would honestly be possible. It would honestly kind of come out of nowhere. It would kind of come out of left field story-wise, unless they end up making it a DLC because everyone is asking for it, rather than a DLC that will actually help answer some of the questions we have from the game, since they might want to keep things vague and open-ended for whoever is taking over next. But I guess then again, we'll see.